Well, hello. How are you getting on? My name's Marty. I play in a band called Ennis Co. I'm from Limerick in Ireland, and you're very welcome to the first episode of this new weird and wacky project that I've dreamt up in my head called DIY IRL. Naturally, you're probably asking, what the feck is that? Well, to explain to you, it is a 32-week project where over the next 32 weeks, I'm going to be interviewing a different person from a different county each week that has gone out and done things their own way from whatever background they came from, be it music, art, manufacturing, hospitality, catering. There's really no limit because you can find the independent DIY spirit from any walk of life, really. And that's what I'm trying to tap into with this project. On top of the interviews as well, I'm going to be writing and recording a new song every single week. So at the end of every episode, you'll find a brand new Ennis Co song. So if you're a fan of the band, that's there. You might enjoy it. If you're not and you just want to listen to the chat, you can totally ignore that as well. That's cool too. You're probably asking yourself, why am I doing something like this? And that's a question I ask myself all the time with any pursuit that I ever do, because it's always very questionable. But basically, I'm kind of at a stage with Ennis Co where, albeit fairly modest goals I would have set when it kind of started out with this band and this project, I've kind of achieved a lot of them to a certain extent. So after we released our most recent album, it kind of left me at a point where I didn't really know what to do next. And that was, I suppose, a little bit scary because ever since I started it, I've literally had something lined up constantly on the go and constantly moving forward with plans. And this is the first time really to kind of step back and think, what do I want to do now? Like, where should I take it from here? And in trying to answer that question, I really had to sit down and think, what is it about music, independent music, this band that makes me want to do it? Like, why am I doing it? And I really could break that down after a lot of thinking into two main things. The two things that really make me put so much time and effort into this, and that is, one, meeting people that inspire me and that have the same mentality as myself, and two, writing songs. That's really the two main things that I care about the most. The rest of it, like touring, press, all of that, some of it can be fun, some of it can be a total shit show and make me not want to do this. So really at the core of it, when I could break it down to what I enjoy the most, it's really those two things, talking to people that inspire me and writing songs. So I was trying to think of a way of just tapping straight into that. Like, how can I go right to those two things and bypass all the rest of the bollocks that surrounds being in a band, really? And that's what brought us to this very moment right here, which is DIY IRL. So just to recap as well, so every single week there's going to be a new podcast episode up where I'm going to be interviewing a different guest from a different county in Ireland, and there's going to be a new song at the end of it every week also. So with that in mind, I would like to introduce my very first guest, who is the absolutely amazingly talented and humble and inspiring person that is John Lillis from Ennis, County Clare. If any of you are familiar with John, it'll probably be from his role in Rusangano Family, who are a hip-hop group from Clare and Limerick. They're based between the two counties, and John has produced all the music for Rusangano Family. On top of being a hugely renowned hip-hop producer, John is an educator. That's how I got to know him, through our work with Music Generation, and he's been doing that for a long time. And above all else, John is just an incredibly inspiring person, and it's a very interesting conversation that we had. I think John touches on and says a few things that I personally really needed to hear. So like I said, it's a very inspiring conversation, and I really hope you enjoy it. I really want to thank John for agreeing to chat with me for ages, and I really hope you enjoy the interview and the new song, and fingers crossed we'll see you next week. So, all the best. All right, John Lillis.
Marty.
From Ennis, County Clare. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good today.
Thanks for having me here in your studio.
Yeah, no, delighted that you're here. Looking forward to having a chat.
So, get straight into it. I did a little bit of research, even though we've been co-workers and friends, but I still thought it would be wise to do a bit of research. And one thing that I thought was interesting was when I listened back to your acceptance speech with Rusangano Family for the Choice Prize, of the people that you thanked, it was your family members. And that kind of struck me that it seems like family is very important to you. So I suppose growing up in Ennis, what was it like growing up here, and I suppose how important was your family to the path that you're now on?
Wow, that's a deep, interesting question.
It's a bit of a double barrel question now.
Yeah. Well, let's start with growing up in Ennis. So growing up in Ennis was good, and I think if you live in any reasonably sized town in Ireland, it's not a small town and it's not a city, but it nearly doesn't matter what county you're living in, you're probably going to have similar experiences. So if you grow up in Ennis, you can relate to people from like Clonmel, and it's just this medium-sized town. So there's like still a real strong sense of community in towns of that size, but the one thing that I find is there's kind of like a lack of confidence, or the people don't have the same confidence that they have in a city, and particularly I think when it comes to arts you can sometimes find that it's missing. Now I found for myself that I thought like I really wanted more things to happen in Clare, or more things to be happening in Ennis. And then you get older and you get a car and you drive around and you actually realise, oh, there's loads happening. It's just that like maybe I wasn't tuned into what was happening. But I've had a rocky relationship with Clare. I think I do love the place, but I think like anyone and their hometown, there are times where you absolutely love it, and there's times where you kind of want to see the back of it as well. And through different periods, kind of adopted different feelings towards the town. I heard something recently on a podcast, and the person that they were talking about was a producer from County Clare by the name of Mankey. And someone said he's from Lahinch, and then someone else said he's from Milltown. And then they were like, actually, he only responds to being from Clare. That's his thing. He's like, I'm from Clare. And kind of, I think now that's probably how I'd look at it. It's like, I'm from Clare. I live in Ennis, but I probably spend more time like in rural countryside Clare than I do in Ennis, particularly in the town anyway. Yeah, definitely.
Do you think it's been an advantage being from a smaller place? Because sometimes it can be, like you probably know yourself from like playing a gig in like Berlin or Paris. Like that's a pretty ominous thing, because it's this huge monster with this amazing music scene, and like why would someone go see this small local act when they can go see, you know, someone in a mega dome every night of the week? So I suppose in smaller places you do kind of have to carve it out yourself because it's not there. Do you think that's kind of been an advantage and been helpful for you in certain ways, or has it just been a massive pain in the arse?
It's been a pain in the arse. Like, let's be honest, it's been a pain in the arse. But what I think it does is it makes you have a stronger resolve. And there's times where you could have taken the easy road, and like when anyone that's interested in arts or music or culture, by the time that they hit 18, they have a decision that they can leave their town and they may never come back again, and they can go to Berlin and establish themselves in Berlin. But I think it's interesting when you stay with the place and you kind of sit with the place and you actually realise like it's cooler to be from Berlin than to be, you know, in Ennis, to be based in Ennis. But after a while you kind of actually realize, you know what, they're both cool in different kind of ways. Berlin is amazing, it's fantastic. But I think even if I lived in Berlin, I probably wouldn't be going to, like you said, the big production concerts, because after a while you kind of realize that's just a bit too glitzy from time to time, and sometimes the magic happens in small rooms. Like I love playing small rooms. I love playing big stages as well. I think it's known that there's magic in both of them, but to adopt that thing of like, I only want to play in a stadium, it's kind of like, you know, the equivalent to that is like a soccer player going like, I only want to play in the Premier League. Yeah. It's like, do you like soccer? Do you even enjoy soccer? You know, is it about the status, or is it actually about the like, well, I just want to do this on a day-to-day basis because I enjoy doing it. That's, I think, the important part.
Yeah. Staying on Ennis then, for while we're already there. Obviously Ennis is known significantly for trad.
It is. Has
it been difficult pursuing different types of music in Clare because it is such a stronghold for trad, or has it been like a breath of fresh air? And
well, you can't remove trad from Clare. The two are just so interlinked, and I've actually really kind of started to I wouldn't say that I understand it, certainly not, but I have maybe gained a greater awareness of it, an acceptance of it, and also, like, it has to be said that some of the musicians in Clare are just phenomenal. Like, it's crazy how good they are in, you know, in their own field, in the traditional field. I have an interest in trad, but I'm not extremely passionate about it. Mm-hmm. I might as well be honest about it. They're like, my favorite musician in the world is Martin Hayes, but I'm not going to go, you know, learning the words to old Shannos singing to recite them by the fire in some pub. That's just not going to happen.
It's not going to be your party trick.
So yeah, I do have a respect for traditional music in Clare for sure. Mm. I think before, when you're younger and you're in your 20s, and it's important to say, like, I'm back living in Clare for maybe 3 years now, but prior to that I hadn't lived in Clare in, I don't know, maybe 15 years. And what I did find before, I think this is like something of kind of like when you're a teenager or when you're in your 20s, or if like me you're a bit immature and you're in your late 20s and still thinking like this. But I kind of felt like it was like, yeah, it's us against them, and particularly doing, like, trying to make hip hop in County Clare is like, oh, you're living in the past. But you grow out of that and you actually see, like, oh, these are just different ways of expression. And I know from actually hanging out with some of the trad musicians and listening to, not even listening to them playing or watching them playing, it's just listening to their insights into music. Like, these are serious musicians and they take it very serious. And yeah, I think it's something to be respected. Now I can respect it, definitely. But you wouldn't find me at too many sessions, you know. Yeah. I think there's something interesting that's kind of happening at the moment as well in traditional music, whether it's like kind of trad or folk trad, where there does seem to be a revival or a resurgence in it. And a lot of the newer music that's there, I think it's amazing. But there are certain things that I can say about County Clare, and again, I'm not saying it in a negative sense, but when I lived in different cities and I lived in different towns, I found that it was easier to make a scene, to be involved in a scene. I found that the council, whether it's the county council or the town council, they can be more supportive. And it is one thing that I have found in Ennis over like the 20-year period, that it's like, I don't feel like there's the support for new art and new music in the way that there is support for traditional music. And I think that when people put all their financial support in terms of like promoting trad music in Clare, that actually kills it. It's like, I don't know, it's like, have you never listened to underground music, or, you know, read a book by an underground artist or a anthropologist? It's kind of like, you can throw as much money on something, but that's a lot of the time when the magic is lost a little bit. That I do really feel like a DIY approach towards things produces some of the most interesting results. And I think a DIY approach towards things that then starts to get some funding and gets the backing of a town council or a city council, that's when you can change things on a bigger level. I don't think you're indefinitely going to change things, but I do think that you can have a positive change when people are actually more supportive, as opposed to, oh, what's this strange approach towards things, or what's this different music, you know, like, just because you don't get it doesn't mean that there isn't merit in it.
Yeah, or that there isn't an audience
absolutely
out there kind of crying out for it.
Absolutely, yeah.
It is one of those things where I guess the limitations for if you're not getting funding or have any backing is where it kind of forces you to be creative. And then when you do have a little bit of money, you can make it go a lot further than someone or a particular group or genre that's just has had money thrown at it its entire span, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, I think the thing of like always throwing money at certain institutions or at individuals is not going to lead to creativity.
No, totally not. Or success even.
Or success.
I used to, when I was younger, kind of think that you'd see certain bands and it's like, oh, they've so much money, of course they're going to be popular.
Mm-hmm.
But then you do see some bands that are on major labels that get every opportunity in the world and it just doesn't click. And I think really what it boils down to is this, the music isn't honest enough or isn't good enough, and
yeah,
the reasons that they're in it isn't necessarily the right reasons, and money doesn't produce good art at the end of the day.
No.
It can help good art, but
well, I think there comes a point where it's something that I suppose I became aware of with Rusangano, and as Rusangano started to get bigger, the thing that I realized was, oh, you actually can't do, well, no, I can't. And God knows, and Merle, when you put the three of us together, there's a certain amount that we can do as three individuals. But when it becomes something a little bit bigger and you're moving against the machine is, I suppose, the best way to describe it. There's only so much you can do. And there's also a thing as well of when people have a lot of funding or financial backing, a lot of the time the financial backing is what allows them to put a narrative on the product that they've produced. So whether that's through advertising or whether it's through, I don't know, like merchandising or getting on all the blogs that they need to be on, and it's all sculpted in a certain kind of way. The thing that I noticed as Rusangano kind of progressed forward is that unless when you put something out there, the media or the industry or the audience or people in general will react to it the way that they want to react to it. And often the narrative that you used to make this music or to in the sculpting of the general thing, that might actually disappear, and it becomes, oh, it's actually now what people are perceiving it. It can be quite different than what someone perceives of it, or then, you know, the media will just take an idea, run with it and be like, that's what it is, but they won't ever actually ask you, is that what it is?
Yeah, or
they'll make a decision and go,
yeah.
that's we've decided that's what it is. Do you know? That sounded conspiracy theory-esque there.
The Irish music industry, man.
Yeah.
It's all set up.
Yeah.
Going back to something a little bit more lighter in Irish music industry conspiracy then, when did music start becoming I suppose a passion in your life, or that it started becoming more important to you than the average kid?
I'd say age 10 was kind of the big moment. I saw Public Enemy on Top of the Pops, and I only saw like tops, I would say maybe 15 seconds, and was petrified, absolutely petrified. They were all wearing black, and Flavor Flav was wearing a white tuxedo with a top hat, and there was just something about the way, I don't know if it was video or performance, but I was really intimidated by it. And I also was like, I've never heard anything that sounds like this, or it didn't feel like I'd heard anything that sounded like it. And then, yeah, I had spent some time in America, and every time that I went to the States, I always brought a Walkman with me. My sister was doing the same thing. We were tuning into local radio stations. So it's really weird now that I'm, only pieced this together much, much later, but at like, I don't know, 13 years of age, we would overnight in New York, and then on our way to go to, we'll say, Florida. And when we were overnighting in New York, I'd always be like, okay, what radio station can I get? And I was tuning in, and I was hearing a radio station which was called Hot 97 at the time. It's terrible now, but at the time it was okay. And so I was hearing this maybe only 2 to 3 times a year. But
what were you doing in America? Were you?
I was just going on holidays,
okay.
Family holidays. My father worked in the airport, so it was cheaper for us to go on holidays to the States than it was to Dublin. So we used to just get in a flight. We had the free flights at the time, and we'd be like, okay, let's go to New York or let's go to Florida, and that definitely exposed me to hip hop when it wasn't widely promoted in Ireland. I'll say this, now when you look at 2FM, and 2FM are really, and RTE are really pushing the thing of hip hop, and we support hip hop, and putting the orchestra to play with hip hop now. And it's kind of I actually grew up listening to Dave Fanning and listening to the radio and watching whatever it was. There was a program on a Sunday morning on TV, and they showed music videos for 2 hours, and I used to always be ready to record. But I know that no rap music ever was played, or hip hop music was ever played. There was a hidden blanket ban on it. So it's weird to see now where it's I don't know if it's the effect of globalization, but 20 years later, it's such a mainstream thing. And that's something that it's made me fall out of love with it. So it's I don't really listen to hip hop too much anymore. And I don't hide that fact either. It's something I grew up with, and it's in me. It's like my kidneys. I can't really get rid of them. It's just in there, but you're not really going to find me sitting down and listen to too many rap albums the whole way through. 1 out of 20 albums that I listen to might end up being a rap album. But I did get to hear this music from travelling before maybe other people were getting to hear it, particularly in Ennis. And I started to collect tapes. That was a really big thing. I was maybe from the age of 10 onwards, I was collecting tapes, and moved on to CDs when I was 13 or 14. But all my friends in Ennis at the time were interested in quite similar music, and it was certain things that I was interested in, but music by a long shot was the prime one. And it just wasn't, there was nothing that was going to knock it off its pedestal in any kind of way, or felt like I have to be involved in this medium. I know that I'm not a player because I've never been sent to, a lesson before in my life, but I feel like I have to be involved in the music in some kind of way. I really didn't change from being, I never really thought about making music until I was much older. I was just interested in being involved, whether that was being a radio DJ. I wrote about music. Most people know I was in, I had a teenage phase of being addicted to radio competitions, which I did every single night, and I won a considerable amount of, I was going to use the word booty there, but I meant it as in pirate booty.
Yeah. What was the strangest thing that you won?
I won a year's supply of Guinness.
That's pretty good.
At 16, yeah. Oh. And I sold all of it, so that I could buy more music. I was entering competitions all the time, and
I've always been curious. So a year's supply, how does that work? Is it like you ring up some number and you're like, here, I'm after drinking 20 cans there at the weekend. Can you send me on 20 more? Or does a pallet of Guinness land on at your front door?
A pallet arrived at my parents' house, and you know what the really weird thing was? I wasn't even entering that competition to win the year's supply of Guinness. I just wanted tickets to go to a concert. And big prize was a year's supply of Guinness, and it was like, whatever, like, I just really want to go to this Massive Attack gig. And so I got addicted to competitions. And when I was 16 to 18, actually 16 to 19, I suppose, I was winning all these tickets. I was winning loads of CDs. I was winning quite a lot of booze as well, but it was just, I kept entering these competitions and getting CDs, and I wanted to acquire more music and learn more about music, and I came at this from a really, like, it's, you know, when I say there, like, I was into these competitions and I was addicted to them, I came at this from a really weird angle. So my parents got like an encyclopedia of music. There was like these book clubs that you could become part of before, and they were part of a book club, and I remember we got this encyclopedia of music, but I used to just read it over and over and over and over, and we got the Enemies, the front page. It was this book that was like the front page of the Enemy for, I don't know, 50 years, and I really read that one like all the time. So it was kind of like, I knew by the time I was 16 or 17, it's like a pretty good knowledge of music. And then I discovered that there was a shop in the centre of Ennis, and it was quite a big newsagent, and in the back alley behind it they had bins where they would throw the old magazines into the bin, and at lunchtime in school I'd just go down and, like, it, you know, again looking at it now, not the strongest look, but I would get into the bins and take the magazines that were outdated, that they were thrown out, and it didn't matter if it was an opera magazine or a metal magazine. It was like, I just want to know more. I need to learn more.
This is obviously all pre-internet.
Yeah. Maybe the internet was there, but we definitely didn't have it in my house. And I started taking all these magazines. I remember like country and western magazines and bringing them home, and there'd be a free CD. So now I was getting exposed to a lot more music, and that's what led basically to the competition stage. Because I had read so much.
You had this knowledge.
I had this knowledge, and every time they'd ask a question, it was like bizarre questions that like a 16-year-old who listens to rap music shouldn't necessarily know. So I started winning all this stuff. I started going to gigs, and it just felt like, at that time, it felt like, this is the only thing that I can do. I don't know how I can be involved in it. I think that I need to use, you know, whether it's writing or whether it is like being a DJ, but I just want to share music with people.
Yeah. And what was your first involvement then?
Realistically, it was probably radio. I was involved in radio when I was doing my leaving cert in Ennis. Yeah, I suppose some interesting stuff would have, like, there was a band in Limerick called Radars, and they were doing some interesting stuff at the time.
I haven't heard of them.
They were like kind of like mixing soul with little bits of electronics and drum and bass, but it was all live. So it was like live drummer, live keyboard player, and all those people are like, who were in that band, are super established now, and they're course directors and, you know, UL and stuff or whatever. But at 16 I went in to interview them, and then I went up to Ennis Diamond to interview the Walls, who were the Stunning. I think actually they weren't the Stunning at the time. That was even before
Steve and his brother.
Yeah. That was even before my time when they were the Stunning, but they were the Walls, and I kind of liked what they were doing, so I did some interviews with them, and it was all for like Clare FM in Ennis, a project that was on. And
so did you go to Clare FM and ask them, can I do a show, or how does
it was like a school's project, and I think maybe 4 or 5 of us were involved in putting this radio show together, and I know that out of those 4, I think there was 5 of us involved, and I know 2 of us took it serious, and we really put a lot of time into it. And then that led me, I went to Cork. I researched where's the best radio station, college radio station in Ireland, and it said Cork. So I kind of decided to move to Cork off the back of that. I'd been to Cork 1 or 2 nights. My sister had been in college down there, so I'd gone down to stay down there, and it was like, whoa, this is a city. This is a proper city. Like, could I survive in it? I want to try. So I went down there and I started in college radio, and did a really bad radio show on Cork Campus Radio for I think 3 years. And
were you going to college at this time?
I was going to college at that time, yeah. And I had just started to DJ as well. So I was now buying records. I was buying vinyl records. I randomly at a house party in Ennis started rapping once. I had like 16 lines that I'd written down. I was like, I'm going to do this. And I did that. So then that kind of brought me a little bit more into I wouldn't say the live music spectrum, but suddenly it was like, there was a band in Ennis that were jamming, and they were like, do you want to come and record a song with us? And I did that. I think we did 2 songs, and then I met some dudes in Cork, and I was DJing, and again I had just these 16 lines of a song. I think I'd written another 16, so I had 32 lines now. Okay. And I ended up joining a band in Cork called Metabolics, with 2 of my best buddies still to this day, and that was kind of like the birth of where things would have started. You know?
And what were you playing in the band?
Nothing. I was a rapper.
Oh, you were rapping in them.
Oh God, did I actually say this? I shouldn't have said any of this.
I've listened to a few interviews.
Actually,
and even in classes, you always say I've gone through a rap phase, but we're not going to talk. I'll
tell you what.
That.
We may drop the name out of this, right?
Ooh, this is exclusive.
That might have to be edited out. So there was I only did that for a short period of time. I wasn't good at it, but what it did, it made me realize, oh my God, I love being involved in music in some kind of way.
What were you studying in college?
Studying English and sociology.
Okay.
That was in Cork. And that was I suppose how things started. I met through that group in Cork, I met various other people who would have informed what I was doing or changed kind of direction. And there's a couple of people there, but Naive Ted is one of them. I would have met Naive Ted. We did a gig together back in UCC. Actually, no, I wasn't gigging at that, but I ran that gig, and I put on a DJ called Deviant, and that was mind blowing. And that certainly would have pushed me to go, I'm like going to take this a lot more serious now. Seeing what he could do on a set of decks at whatever 19 or 20, it was just phenomenal.
And was it primarily electronic stuff that you were putting on gig wise at this time?
It would have been I would have been involved in when I say everything, like I don't mean everything. I would have been involved in putting on little bits of rap, little bits of techno, simply because I lived with a guy who was he kind of taught me how to mix, to DJ mix. And even though I was a hip hop DJ, I was practicing on techno, and I was learning through techno at that time. And I had some friends who were into drum and bass, so I was doing some kind of drum and bass stuff as well. But it would have largely been electronic in that sense. It was never like, at that stage I was very much in the burn the guitars mind frame kind of.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. And what happened after Cork then?
Cork, honestly, they're a hazy couple of years. I spent some time in Galway. I moved home to Clare. Whatever, your 20s, you kind of had the crack, the usual.
You ended up in Tralee. You were in Tralee at one point, were you?
Yeah, I was in Tralee at one point, and nothing really happened for a couple of years. And Tralee it's funny that you mention it, because that's like the important one. I moved to Tralee, and I met a group of people down in Tralee. But there was two other people that I was going to list when I was talking there that were really important. One of them is John Goff, and another one is Keith Phelan from a collective in Tralee called Clubhead Bang Bang. So me and John Goff moved from Ennis. We had been running some gigs here in Ennis. Actually, that's what I'd been doing for the couple of years. I've been running some gigs in Ennis, and that had been they'd been kind of club gigs, DJ gigs, but I'd now started to kind of put on a couple of bands and stuff. And I was in a good position in that a club here had offered to allow me to book for them. They gave me a kind of a fee, and they didn't really care if people showed up or not. So I was taking chances, and I underline chances now looking back on it. That I suppose you're just learning little bits, and maybe I learned that I wasn't a great promoter, but I definitely enjoyed my time doing it. And yeah, I moved to Kerry then to study sound engineering with a buddy of mine. We'd been running some shows. And when we moved to Kerry, our whole thing was like, oh, we're going to put on a night. We didn't know anything really about Tralee. We're going to put on a night, and hopefully it goes as well as our one did in Ennis. And we saw this one particular venue, and the guy was like a real Kerry man, but he was like, do you want to see the back room? We were like, okay. And when we went into the back room, it's just the most well-organised live event space I had ever walked into. The level of decoration, just the insight into like, oh man, that's how you set a room up.
Yeah.
And
what venue is this?
it was the Greyhound in Tralee.
Yeah. Played there a few times.
Yeah, and at the time, the room that he basically brought me into was the room that Clubhead Bang Bang would have been ran out of.
Right.
And that was just a collective of people in Kerry. Some of them were students. Most of them were all originally from Kerry. Yeah, as soon as we walked into that room, I sent them an email later that day and was like, I want to work with you in whatever capacity I can. Apparently, they laughed at the email quite a lot, and they were like, who is this? Like, what?
Who's this guy think he
Who's
is?
this guy? Yeah, like, coming down from Ennis saying that he's a DJ and he wants to work with us. And that was probably the most important learning curve, I think, ever. In terms of learning about music that I'd never heard before, learning about, like, I was in Kerry studying sound engineering, and very quickly I realised I didn't know anything about sound engineering. Mm-hmm. So there was like the learning curve there. But the thing that I would say is the people who were running Clubhead Bang Bang were a couple of years older than me and were at least decades older than me in terms of intelligence, and I just learnt a load from them, just in the way that they kind of viewed culture and art and the importance of it and the importance of community. That heavily affected me moving forward, where I was kind of like, oh, actually I'm not really as interested in It changed my perspective in that I became interested in music in the community. And I saw through their hard work in Kerry, I saw how they basically, like, at the time that I was there, that was like a beacon in the town, Clubhead Bang Bang. For any of the young people there, for any of the creative people in the town, the level of work that they put into it, they did it all like not for profit. And they also had really good diets, which I learnt about as well, to a certain degree. Like, I remember they had a thing, I was in their house one day, and I was like, what are you eating? And they were like, mung beans. And I was like, what the hell is mung beans? But it was like hanging out with a collective of people where you're like, oh, I'm actually really starting to learn. You know, this is opening my eyes, kind of being part of it. And great experiences. I loved Kerry, and I still love Kerry to this day. I saw amazing shows in Kerry. It was, in fairness, it was kind of like a magical time to be down there, because Out in a Limb had just kicked off. 7:10 were just coming through out of Killarney. They're like one of the most influential bands for me ever, just to see these guys that were like, at the time, I don't know, 5 years younger than me, and they're like seasoned jazz musicians at age 20. It was ridiculous. Like, it was crazy how good they were. But yeah, I saw really some amazing shows. I can't remember what I went to first of all that night, but I know that there was one night in Kerry. Oh, that was it. I went to Keith Fullerman Whitman in a school, and that was like an improv performance. Keith Fullerton Whitman is like really famous American electronic artist who my buddy in Tralee had just brought him over to play. Put him on in a school, and I was like, gig in a school, and like this guy's doing electronic music, and it was beatless electronic music, and I didn't really know what ambient was, and suddenly it was like, that was amazing. And then someone later that night was like, oh yeah, it's like another electronic gig that's on in Killarney in a while, where we all jump in the car, where we drive down to Killarney, and there was just that kind of environment, I think, where I think the general population of Ireland wouldn't have looked at Kerry like it's kicking.
Yeah.
But when you were down there in the centre of it, it was, for me, it was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
You put on some amazing... Didn't you put on Adebisi Shank at one point as well?
No, I actually put on Adebisi Shank in Cork.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was in Cork. I didn't put them on in Kerry. But yeah, again, just getting involved with that collective. It was Keith, Trassa and Alva, and another girl, Amo, that I suppose would have been some of the main people involved in it. There was loads. It was, 10, 12, 13.
Just collective,
I mean, they had a really sophisticated taste in music, and it was crossover with what I was interested in at the time. Yeah, I mean, an awful lot of really good bands came through Kerry around that time. I got to see 10 Past 7, Give a Man a Kick, the Redneck Manifesto. I remember, like, they brought this guy over from, I think it was like Czech Republic, and he was passing currents through knives and making like noise music off the back of it. And this, for me, again, was like, I'd never seen someone play on knives before.
Probably haven't since either.
No,
right?
Absolutely not. But there was a lot of things like that where it was just new experiences, and that really opened things up. Where I was like, I kind of knew at that stage, it was like, I'm a little bit done with the old hip hop kind of thing. I'm not going chasing this in the same kind of way anymore.
And did that kind of open the way for you to kind of move into youth work? Because you mentioned kind of the community feel in Tralee.
Yeah, I was definitely interested in it. I did my first ever workshop in Tralee in a place called Shim Satira, and shortly afterwards I had to move to Limerick to go to college in Limerick, do a master's in I moved to Iceland in between temporarily for a woman, and that didn't work out. So then I came back heartbroken and was like, better do a master's to take my mind off it. Actually, my buddy told me to do it, John Goff. He was great in terms of like, here's the plan. You're going to move to Limerick and you're going to do a master's, and I'm going to do it as well. And I'd been running shows with him for years. So I moved to Limerick, and I just did the master's in music technology. And when I finished that, someone asked me to do a workshop in Limerick City. One workshop with one particular young person, and I think it's a 6-week project with them, and it's 11 years later.
Jeez,
yeah, that's kind of how it just went from that one particular workshop, and kept going.
And when then because I think you were working with God Knows before Rusangano came to be kind of what it's known to be. So was that much further down the line from that point then?
It was maybe 4 or 5 years later, and I actually moved home temporarily. Yeah, I think for like a year I was working with Clare Youth Service here, and it was kind of like, at the time, I think I had more hours than I expected, so I ended up being like, I better be in Clare, and I want to be in the community while I'm doing this job. And I met I had seen God Knows' band True Blood Soldiers on the internet. I'd seen 1 or 2 of their videos, and like, the thing that I'd say is, compared to everything else that was happening in Clare, these guys were just like a shining light, where the light that was maybe being emitted wasn't a light that I was familiar with, or even kind of like, oh, that's very pleasing to me. But I thought, in terms of doing something different and doing something interesting, these guys are like so ahead of the field compared to everyone else. And I got talking to God Knows one day. He was very obviously a leader. That characteristic was in him from the first day I met him. But I got talking to God Knows, about like things like funding, and he was probably quite young. He might have only been like 19 at the time, but you could see he was serious. He wanted to do this, and then we did one track together, which was okay, and it was really it was the first time that we did a show together. I think was like, ooh, I think there's something in this.
Right.
You know,
Where was your first show?
First show was in Lahinch. It was ran by Elementary, which was Aina Burt and Connor Crimmins, the trad musician. And it was great crack. We played in the Function 1 sound system. And
your favourite?
No. No, I don't like Function 1s. But so we played up there, and I just kind of knew that whatever happened that night, that was a new energy that I wasn't used to. And I knew that my DJ sets were energetic, but I knew that it was like, oh geez, I think that actually this is a good bond here.
Yeah.
Like, we can do some stuff. And it kind of just went from there. Yeah.
You'd said to me before that you're from the outset, you're like, we want the energy of a punk gig, but kind of married with hip hop. Is that something that literally just off the bat, because God knows is so energetic, or was it something that you kind of sat down and talked about kind of before you really pushed on with the project?
It's a good question. I don't know. And I think early, like maybe the first 2 years of doing God Knows and my Name is John stuff, it was an energy. Like, it certainly wasn't in the music, but again, I'd say that, like, I grew up on hip hop, but I hadn't been watching hip hop for years.
Yeah.
And I was more into bands like Battles and like 10 Past 7, Don Caballero. Like, I was listening to a lot of this kind of music, and I definitely didn't want to do shows where it was like, everybody say hey. It was more like, I need the aggression and the energy.
It's the background you came from.
Yeah.
The kind of from your formative years.
Yeah. And there's also the DIY thing as well
of
punk, where it was like, I think people would kind of go, what, a set of decks and a rapper, this can't be any good. In the same way that, like, you know, punk song, you could be like, they only know 2 chords and screaming, and it's like, but when you're in that circle, it's different. And I'm actually reading the Beastie Boys book at the moment, and they're talking about like their early days in punk, and it's insane when you read like all the support, like they were playing, and then like Sonic Youth were playing with them, Agnostic Front were playing with them, Minor Threat, and they're all like these young kids, and like their whole thing is like, none of us were actually that good.
Yeah.
You know, it's a rite of passage kind of, or whatever, but there was something in the energy of punk that I was like, that's what needs to inform us in some way.
And then Morley eventually came along. How did the marriage of that happen?
The heavens opened and Murley just descended down. And no, Murley was G's best friend for years, and I remember there was one stage, it was kind of just like the logistical kind of things of, you know, God Knows would rap very fast, and I was making faster music at that time. Like, there was concerted effort to keep things out of like fast BPM, but to rap at that speed and to move in the way that God Knows moves on stage, it's like you can't actually hit every single word for an hour in that type of show.
Yeah.
And I remember we were just chatting, and it was like, is there anyone else? And he's like, Murley. Like, Murley he's the one, I'm telling you. Mm-hmm. And I got to meet Murley and hang out with him, and I mean, Murley's just like, the two lads are amazing. They're absolutely amazing, and they're very different from each other. But I really feel like God Knows is the kind of person that he's captivating. It's absolutely captivating, and it's full on, and it's 100% energy, and you're going to get it. And I think with Murley, there is a real deep artistry to what he does. He was the glue that brought the group together. Absolutely, definitely. And just it was very, very interesting to kind of like at that stage, you know, geez, like you got to meet my friend Merle, and suddenly you're like, oh man, like who else are you friends with?
Yeah. Who else do you have in the
this
back
is
pocket
amazing.
here?
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but 3 is a magic number for sure, and 3 is, I think 3 is a magic number in terms of kind of rap groups. I love that idea of like 1 DJ and 2 MCs,
Yeah.
or the 3, whether it's like, again, going back to the Beastie Boys kind of thing or whatever, you know. But I'd also noticed in that form of music, hip hop or rap or whatever, it had got really boring. It was all one person acts, and the music side of it was getting less. Like the producers, the music that I was listening to at that time would have been heavily influenced by Low End Theory and Flying Lotus and Hudson Mohawk. But they had all, those producers had like stepped away, and they weren't even working with rappers anymore. It was kind of like rap was dead in one kind of sense. And yeah, then it was like, okay, let's form like the model of an older hip hop group, and let's see how we get on doing it when we don't actually really make hip hop at all.
Yeah.
Do you know? And yeah, it was great.
And when you decided to get Morley on board, because I say from the outside looking in, I had been aware of My Name Is John. I've been aware of God Knows. I had kind of seen online and stuff that you were doing stuff together, and I'd seen just stuff from Morley as well. And I think, didn't even God Knows Morley put like a split like release together? Or maybe they were just doing shows together. Maybe that's where I saw it. But is it kind of when the 3 of you got together, that's when you're like, right, this is a new band, this is a new name?
Yeah, well, we were somewhat strategic,
Yeah.
I suppose. So this is when you get into the specifics of it. But it was like, so we did like God Knows we did this album, which was God Knows and My Name Is John, called Rusangano Family. And the reason, like, it was like, originally it was kind of like, oh, this might be God Knows' thing.
Yeah.
But because it became, I was so interlinked with the project, it's like, it's a collaboration. So let's put God Knows first. But I had done a collaboration with another Limerick producer, Graham S. And God Knows was part of that. So when we did that project, it was like Graham S. plus My Name Is John featuring God Knows. And then it became God Knows and My Name Is John. And the next thing that happened was God Knows and My Name Is John featuring Merle. So I kind of was like, all right, like, this is getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because, you know, what if we get 2 people on a track?
Yeah.
This is just...
There's only so much characters you can put in a tagline.
You got it. So yeah, we just kind of, I think once we did a couple of shows as the 3 of us, we knew this is it. This is like, there's a good unit to work within, and all focus then became, we did Merle's EP as well, but we actually felt it was really important to not go and make a piece of music under Rusangano Family. It was like, no, Merle has to come to the forefront, because if we do Rusangano, like, everyone will know me and G's name, but they won't know this other guy.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, let's produce an EP for you, get your name out there, and then it's like the 3 sides of a triangle coming together for Rusangano.
That's really interesting that you kind of made a conscious decision of doing that.
Yeah, we actually did stretch it out for maybe a year before we were like, okay, now it's we know what we can do as the band, but it's important. Like, we're 3 individuals. We're 3 very different dudes with different tastes in music, and it's something that when you know, it's different, I think, than a band per se that plays instruments, because it's kind of like, no, you need to get your voice out, and I need to get my voice out, and he needs to get his voice out. Like, we're respective, I think, of respectful. Not respective.
You're respected. You demand respect. Damn it. So after Merle's EP, then did you begin working on the album straight away, or were you working on a few singles and then eventually you're like, fecka, we should just do an album here? Or when did the idea of the album come around?
We had 1 song. I made 1 beat, and I think we were just like, oh, that's a beat for an album. And then it just, it manifested itself. You know yourself, like, a lot of the time you don't really know where the music comes from until it's actually there as a recorded track.
It just happens.
It just happens. It happens over a period of time. Sometimes it happens in half an hour. Sometimes it happens in 4.5 months. But,
and did it take you long to put the album together?
Can't really remember. Like, and that's being honest. Like, because I lived it at that time. I actually did live it, and it's something that, like, the thing that I'd say is I'm a little bit older now in that I probably wouldn't live music like that again. And I'm interested in other, I'm not just interested in music. I want to do other things. But I definitely lived it there for a while, and that was, I mean, it was all day, every day for, I don't even know, can't remember. Like, it's weird, do you know? It just, there wasn't an album, and then a year later there was an album.
Okay.
We actually went to a place to do a little bit of recording outside of Killaloo. We went on a kind of musical retreat. We rented a cabin and went out there and brought all our equipment, and we might have only recorded like 2 songs, but the bones of everything happened over the course of maybe 5 days out in Killaloo, and then yourself 5, 6, 7 months of right now. Here comes the horrible thing of mixing and
Did you mix it yourself?
I did, yeah. I think up until then, we have done everything ourselves. Yeah. Like, if there's a Rusangano 2.0, is actually knowing to go like relinquish the control. It's something that I've learned anyway in music, or trying to learn, that relinquishing control is a really important step. And if you come from a DIY ethos or background, sometimes that can be really tough. Totally, yeah. Because well, actually, I'm doing this for a good while, and I know that you shouldn't charge €3,000. You should charge 30, or all these kind of things. So it's something that I'm really glad I had that DIY background, but I also realised that to do things on a big platform, you need a team, and there's no point in, I'm not the best mixer in the world, I'm not the best masterer in the world, and I'm certainly not the best producer or musician, and the longer that I try and do all of those, like, I'll be really good at all of them when I'm 80 and dead, and I'd kind of, now I'm like, I get it, it's like, get really good at just production, or get really good at just mixing.
Most people would know then that the album went on to get nominated for the Meteor Choice Award. So were you surprised, or did you expect for it to get nominated? Because obviously there was still buzz prior to the album being released around Rusangano Family, so you certainly were up in those realms of the Irish music scene anyway, kind of like to the forefront. But was it a surprise to get nominated, or did you expect it?
Well, I tell you what, the year that we put out God Knows and My Name Is John, Rusangano Family, Niler 9 gave that the best Irish album of the year, and the Choice Music Prize didn't even shortlist it in like whatever 80 albums listed, and at that stage it was kind of like, we knew amongst ourselves, we're kind of doing something here, and all we would really be doing is laughing that it wasn't nominated in any kind of way, but it's just like, hey, if like, we're seeing this because we're playing these gigs and we're meeting people, so we know it's having an impact, and if we're not included on your list, fine. And I this is the thing that I'd say, genuinely now, for most of those things, it's like, fine, I don't care. Like, if it's, you can't be tuned into everything all the time. And at the time your emotions would be a little bit hurt, and you're like, why are we? It
can be a bit disheartening.
Absolutely, yeah. But then you just realise, hey, the people that probably put that together, they have jobs and families and the exact same thing that we all have, and there's no point in getting, like, it just had a fantastic year, so I like that year, not this year, but I just had a fantastic year, and just because someone doesn't think that the piece of art that I have made is, worthy of a nomination for a prize, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Do you know? And in
satisfied yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think as things went on and got bigger and coming towards the choice, it was like, we want to win this. Like, we actually do want to win this. And I'm very thankful to win it, but also a little like, I don't care. Like, and I know that sounds terrible, but it's going to help you in certain regards and it's going to hinder you in other ones. Yeah. That's just being honest. Like, that really is, and we were an act who, because we came from that independent DIY kind of background, now being pushed onto a big platform, it's like, we don't really have the team that we probably need to make this work. But if we continue doing it the way that we're doing it, we're going to look unprofessional.
Yeah.
Because we're a little DIY unit, and it's hard to marry those two ideas and see which one is going to win. And to a certain extent, it's like I definitely want to follow those things up. But in another regard, it actually made me look at like the whole thing and go, what are the things that are really important? So like, I really enjoy doing this podcast with you, right? But I hate interviews. I hate them. Like, and I just see things that you said and you're like, I actually didn't mean that. Like, and it's not that it's just you didn't say it in the right kind of way. So I think that it's something that a little bit of success or focus on the group is a good thing, because it's going to make you really question what it is that you're doing with music. Are you doing it for yourself? Are you doing it for other people? Are you doing it for the industry? Are you doing it to be seen? Are you doing it to make fantastic art? There's all these questions, and at some stage you actually need to, because you move so fast in music and you have to keep at it, I think, all the time. But it's really important to just stop and pull the brakes and be like, what's my reason for this? Do I love this? Mm-hmm. And if I don't love this in the same kind of way, I'm not going to chase this. I do not want to see my face in the front of a magazine if I'm not in love with what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're great things. They're great platforms. And I'm not speaking for the band. I'm literally only speaking for myself and my own experiences. That it's important to know what it is that you want from it, I think. Mm-hmm. And not allow someone else's vision of what you could be or what you should be to in any way influence, because those people are not in your band. The only people that are in your band are the people who make that music. And someone who thinks that you should wear this particular type of shoes or whatever, it's like, for me, that's when it's kind of, the conversation sort of ends, and it's like, I don't care what someone's wearing.
And what was it kind of overwhelming, the influx of those kind of conversations after winning the choice prize?
Nah.
Or was it a gradual, like it was
no, I think anyway? Do you know what, man? I think it's like, I see music spreading. Actually, let's ask you a question, right? I'm sick of talking here for a while. Where do you see music going?
Like music as a whole?
Yeah.
I have absolutely no idea.
Okay.
And I kind of couldn't care less either. To be honest, one of the main reasons why I'm sat here talking to you, John, is I'm kind of at a point with Ennis Co where, in terms of from the DIY perspective, I've kind of taken it as far as and beyond what I hoped to have done at the very start.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, what do I do with this? I suppose I've gotten a little bit of dipping my toes into the industry side of things with releasing a new album. Like nothing on the scale of probably what ye have, but at the same time,
honestly, I think it's really similar.
Yeah,
I think it's really similar, and I think it's kind of the trajectory and the way that you're going about it is obviously they're very different, like entities in themselves. But I do think that there's a lot of similarity there. Do you know?
I suppose so. At the same time, it's kind of certain aspects have kind of put a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, and it's kind of made me really think: what do I actually enjoy? Like, what is the thing that makes me dedicate most of my life to this? And that is meeting people that inspire me, and writing and releasing songs. Well, writing songs, releasing it is just a byproduct of it. So that's why I'm doing this whole thing, is interviewing different people that inspire me, and also writing the songs, because really when it boils down to, at the end of the day, that is what I love doing. And I kind of couldn't give a fuck outside of that. But it's only now that I'm realising that.
Yeah. I wish you had told me, like, we're nearly, I'd say, an hour into this. If you had told me that I could curse, this would have been such a different podcast.
Sorry, yeah. I swear a lot, it's going to be a heavy feature from here on in.
Okay.
You're going to have to get an hour and a half worth of swearing into the next half hour or so.
Okay.
Here's an interesting question for you.
Yeah.
So this could just be a personal thing for me, but I've kind of always, let's say from the very start of playing music, I always thought, like, wow, if I could just do this, I will be happy. Like, wow, if I could just play Dolan's Warehouse, I would be happy. And then you play it, and the like happiness of it lasts like 30 seconds, and then you just think, oh well, like, I wish I could do this.
Yeah.
And then it might take a year to build to that thing. Like, I wish I could release an album on a label.
Yes, yeah.
And then you release an album on a label, and you're like the sense of achievement for me, it doesn't really last. It's like, once I've gotten it, my mind it immediately moves on to the next thing that I don't have, and I'm kind of bummed out that I don't have it. Have you ever felt that? And I suppose how do you deal with that? And are you kind of at a stage now where that doesn't necessarily enter your mind so much, or is it still, even because let's say you've reached heights that probably never will get to, but at the same time,
no one will ever.
Yeah. the biggest band in the world, but even at the same time, part of me feels like if I reached that, I'd still be dissatisfied.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard. Like, you really should be savouring the moment, but it's hard to.
That's such an excellent question. Like, honestly, it's brilliant. And I think absolutely 100% in agreement with what you said there. If we could just do this, if we could just get to this place. And I would say that in some of the things that I was saying earlier there, I would have been like saying, oh, the DIY approach, or coming, like we nearly felt like outsiders coming into the industry in some kind of sense. One thing that I think that it can be very easy to be down on the industry, and this is something that I saw within music. So I'll get your question now in a sec, but one of the things that I saw within music is to hate the industry and like, it's the man kind of, or whatever. But it's like, it's a business, and people, a lot of the time, the people that I met within the industry were sounder and were more straight up and were more honest than a lot of the people that were in the alternative scene. And they didn't kind of like hold their noses up at certain things. It was just like, oh cool, I'm like not into that. But it wouldn't be like, oh man, that's so whatever.
That's not cool.
Yeah. And I actually was like, oh man, I'm actually starting to dislike the alternative scene as much as the mainstream thing. And like you said, what are the important things? It's like writing music. So, and I like the way there that you said, like, writing songs, and then kind of was like, releasing isn't important. I don't even click save anymore on a lot of the stuff. Now, I make music every day, but I don't bother clicking save a lot of the time, because it's like, there was no save like 50 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Or go back 100 years ago. Yeah. There was no save. There was absolutely no save. Music was something, it was experiential, and it happened, between one person or a group of people, and it was never captured. It certainly didn't have anything to do with branding. Like, it was such an organic thing. And I think that, like I asked you, where's the future of music going? I see a very strong divide, I think, that's going to come in music. And I think basically you're going to be left with musicians, and you're going to be left with celebrities. And I think it's coming to the point where it needs to split. I think it actually needs to split, because I think even musicians are getting somewhat, what would you say, confused where they're even to the point of like they kind of should be knowing that it's all about the songs that they make or how good they are at their instrument, but they're now kind of like, yeah, but I need to get my Instagram followers up or anything like that. It's like, man, do you think that Mozart or Beethoven were worried about Instagram followers, or that like a drum circle in Africa with like 40 people involved, they're kind of like, oh, no one's recording this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I want to get back to music more like that, and I do see that. I think that that's where music is going to go. I think people are just going to go like, I'm sick of people trying to sell me tracksuits or like a certain type of drink or whatever it is from music. I think I kind of see a split coming. And then, yeah, to answer your question, was there a point where you were like, are you satisfied? You know, like, have you done what you needed to do? I never looked at music wasn't the be all and end all for me anyway, because I was involved in kind of like community, I was involved in education, and I was starting to get more interested in things like honestly, like philosophy, psychology, and science. And I was like, actually, this is what I'm really interested in. And what would it be like to play in Vicar Street? What would it like to be on that stage with the audience there? It'd be grand, like, but I still kind of want to just go home and read that psychology book, you know, read a chapter of that psychology book. And that's the thing that makes you start to weigh things up to go, what's really important? Is it really important that I do this interview for this college newspaper or whatever it is, or is it actually, and it all those things, they just take time away from what it is that you want to do yourself. And I'm not one of these people that is like, you should always put yourself first, but trust me, from someone who never put themselves first for a long period of time, I actually now really see the benefits of it, where I think it is, the industry is such a weird thing. And I haven't even really been involved in it, but just from what I saw, it was like, yeah, I don't know if I can do that. And then there are little things in music and in the live circuit, and I'm saying you definitely have come up against this as well, where you're like, one really good one or one really cool person that you meet, they kind of, they keep you going for like 8 months afterwards, or a year,
or a particular gig.
Absolutely.
And that's that's enough to kind of keep the fire going for a good while.
For sure. Or you're like, I don't even, those 50 gigs that I was doing, now I only need to do 5, and they only need to be those 5 because those are things that are feeding my soul, but those other 45 are actually eating it. And there are certain things, you know, I think, like, I will say DeBarra's in Clonakilty, that's always an amazing experience, sitting down and meeting Ray. He's
some man.
Yeah, he is. Like, he's a rare soul in music.
Absolute legend.
I think what Mary Hickson has done with Sounds from a Safe Harbour, that completely blew my mind 2 years ago. Like, I had not really been involved in something like this. It made me think in a different way about music. And then we were really lucky to work with Mary Hickson again for the People Festival in Berlin.
That was something I did want to ask you about. How was that? Because they're speaking about the separation between celebrities wanting to get as many Instagram followers and people making music. It seems like that festival is just centered around that. Just maybe describe what the festival is and what it was like being there.
Like, I even just thinking about it, I'd nearly get emotional. I owe Mary Hickson a load for the opportunity, and all of us within the group definitely are like, that one was a life changer. It completely was. People is a festival that is ran by the Desners, I think.
They're the guys from National.
From the National, yeah. Justin Vernon from Bon Iver is involved as well. And then there's Tom and Natalie from the Michelberger Hotel in Berlin. And Mary Hickson was involved in it with her team. And her team as well are actually one of the best teams in Ireland. Whether that comes for promotion, whether it's like just stage management, like project management, they're incredible in terms of what they do. But it's a residency essentially in a music hotel in Berlin, where they brought 150 musicians, I think, over, and you stay in the hotel for a week. You have access to the Funk House studios every day, and then on the weekend there's going to be concerts continuously, kind of over the course of 2 days. There's no rules, but they kind of are like, if you should stay within the hotel when you're in the hotel. Don't be going out like, this is the temptation because you're in Berlin. It's like, let's go out, let's. Yeah. But the thing that you actually realize is, like, I don't want to leave this hotel because the people that are here are actually probably more interesting than a lot of the other acts that are playing around the place. And it's kind of like, if someone asks you to jam in that space, you jam from 10 o'clock in the morning, from even earlier maybe, but from 10 o'clock in the morning right through until you go to bed, in different rooms, in different spaces. You're talking to different musicians.
Is it predetermined who you're jamming with, or is it literally just
no, you're up for it,
like, there's Justin Vernon, hi,
completely
Justin,
completely.
Yeah,
like
that's insane.
I needed someone to play a little bit of trumpet on something which wasn't even really a track, but I just like saw a guy going down the corridor and called him in and was like, can you play trumpet on this, do you mind? And he's like, I like got rehearsals in like 4 minutes. I was like, well, the track is only 2, so you could listen to it once and then play over it. And he played away. Yeah, it was great. And then afterwards it was like, oh man, that's the trumpet player in the National. That's like Kyle Resnick. Like,
oh my God.
You know what I mean? He's just played on this song. But it was like everyone left their attitudes at the door. You just had to be sound. And I remember I heard an interview with the musician Beirut, and he was being interviewed, and he was one of the musicians that was there. And one of the things that he said was like, he thought that everyone went through this existential crisis within the first day or the second day or the third day, whereas like, I'm not good enough, all these other people are too good. And me being in that environment, and like, I would always be like, oh God, they're playing notes, like, and yeah, it was the most open, friendly, down to earth. A lot of the time I didn't know who I was in the room with. I didn't know who these musicians were. I'd Google them afterwards and be like, oh my God, that's insane. But it was, yeah, like, we got to hang out with Slow Moving Clouds, got to perform with them. We had the drummer of Why backing us up.
He does an amazing podcast as well, actually.
Oh, really? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I forget the name of it, but it was since you mentioned it to me about him. Yeah, I went back and listened to it, yeah.
Okay, no, do you know what? That's the
different member.
That's the lead member, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yoni Wolf. That is an amazing,
yeah,
it's fantastic, amazing podcast. Yeah, so I kind of felt it, I think that me personally, I was in a very strange position with music, in that I had injured myself, or I'd gotten sick earlier in the year, and I didn't really know if playing music was the wisest idea continuing forward. And it was a problem with my right arm, but when I got over there, it was just like, oh Jesus, like, this is what I want to do every day if I can, do you know? So it was amazing. It was by far the most inspiring thing I've ever been involved in, I think. Do you know? Well, obviously, like, working with you, Marty, is...
I know, I mean, this last hour and a half has been pretty good.
Totally. That and that festival in Berlin. Like,
yeah,
that's it.
We're pretty much, I guess we're running out of time, so I'm going to try and combine a few significant portions of your life into one question. Yeah. So obviously we know each other through youth work. Mm-hmm. I guess it seems like you're kind of very into the whole kind of wellness side of things, looking after yourself and kind of reading up on why certain things like make you feel better, I suppose. And from the outside looking in, it kind of seems like that's the path you're kind of going down at the moment. And I suppose my question is, do you get a similar thing out of that as to what you get out of music, that kind of cathartic experience, and that it does a lot of good for you? And is that the kind of same as well for the youth work as well? Are they all kind of pulling out of the same pools, and is that why you're kind of been going in that direction recently? Okay,
that's an interesting question. And someone asked me recently a question, like quite a flippant question, but they were just like, why do Why do you do what you do? And it shook me to my core. He's like, there is a reason why you do it though. And I was like, I never really questioned it. And kind of kept pushing at it, and I had to really think about it. I saw music in a community kind of way, and I always felt like arts are probably one of the most important aspects of community. And again, you go back to like thousands of years ago, we probably sang before we spoke, but certainly it was, these were community events where everyone sat down and played together. It wasn't like, hey, let me do a 13-minute solo here while you all praise me. That's like the era that we're in now, to a certain degree, But before, it was like about orchestras, or like going back even further, it was about people playing together and sharing. So yeah, that's my interest in music. I don't know where it is, if it's in a changing place. I know that definitely it's in a period of transformation. I definitely want to make more music. And the youth work side of things was ingrained in the music as well, because it was like, oh, let's build a scene. So like this thing that has never been there before, I was like, let's build it. And let's build it with young people. And I'm not building it with a group of like 23-year-olds, because everyone will be like, where's the money, or where's this, but I kind of realised, if you work with a group of like 14 and 15-year-olds and you work with them for 5 years, by the time that they're like 20, 21, 22, they have a really mature approach towards music. Well, maybe, like, but they have
Some people.
I just think it's good. I think that a kid will get into music, they'll get into art off the back of it a lot of the time. Maybe not as much, I don't know, but I do think it's important to bring music out into the community and bring art out into the community. And I suppose the reason that I felt the need to do that in any sense was because Ennis, growing up, wasn't a place that I felt was, for me, held things that I was really interested in. And then like I mentioned, I got sick with a very rare shoulder problem last year, but it was quite debilitating, and I had loads of time on my hands. I couldn't play piano, and that's one of the things that I wanted to start learning to play, and I couldn't DJ, and I couldn't make beats at the time. So I started to read more on things that I've been interested in for maybe 10 years now. You call it health. I would be like, no, Marty, it's not health. Like, it's, I definitely have a weird interest in psychology and in the occult, but I look at it in a very different kind of way, where I actually look at it as that is to do with health. That is to do with keeping yourself healthy. And I'm someone that when I'm learning something or when I'm reading something and my mind is distracted, I'm fine. And I just would make sure that I try, and as long as I'm engaged in something, my mood is, I'm not someone that's ever really suffered from depression. And the reason that I can say that is because I've always been really busy. I haven't had the time to sit down and go, oh, life is terrible. I'm always kind of like, oh man, there's this book I must check out, or there's this record I must check out, or and I think those are great tools to help you learn and figure out what it is that you want to do or where you want to go in life. I've done little aspects of teaching, and I enjoy the thing of being a teacher, but I'd also step away from that. I want to step away from that a little bit, in that I think to be a teacher you have to be very certain about what it is, where you are in your life, what it is that you want to do. And I'm someone at the moment who's like, I actually want to celebrate the fact of like, I haven't a clue what I want to do. I definitely don't want to do the same job for the rest of my life, and I want to do as much different stuff as like if someone was like, you got to DJ for the rest of your life, I'd be like, oh god, no, definitely not. Like, I think if someone was like, you have to DJ 2 nights in a row, I'd be like, I can't. So yeah, it's like, we'll see where where this independent lifestyle leads to kind of next. Do you know, I've never not paid a bill. I don't owe any money. So
World's your oyster.
hopefully, oysters are expensive. I'd say it's more
World's
your,
your periwinkle.
it's a piece of cod.
Bit of dillisk from the hinge.
That's
I think,
it.
on that note, I think we'll wrap it up. So,
Okay.
thanks very much for
No, thank
everything,
you.
John. That was amazing. Thank you very much.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you, Marty.
I left my shoes at the door. I followed white tiles to the living room. Everyone sat on the floor. My lungs collapsed, drowning in perfume. I sat so far away from you, a perfect heather in bloom. Lacking in confidence, your glances are the only thing I will consume. I have told these four walls in the crimson carpet pictures of your dearly departed. Even the good glassware knows of the love I wish to show. Even if I have the chance, I won't. Even if I have the chance, I won't. Even if I have the chance, I won't. Conversation it grew, struggling